Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of PEM Rules, the Pediatric Emergency Medicine podcast. I'm your host, Yaron Ivan, as usual. And today I have a very important guest that I'm very happy to have on the show. Today I'm going to speak to Michael Mojica, who is a PEM attending and physician, and just as importantly, a PEM educator for many years, somebody I've been following for a while and have been using his resources almost every shift. Welcome, Michael, to the show. I am very, very honored to have you. Let me just introduce you to the listeners before we get started. Michael is originally from Brooklyn, New York. He went to medical school in Icon at Mount Sinai, graduating in 1988. Did his general pediatric residency at Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center, graduating in 91, followed by a PEM fellowship at Bellevue Hospital Center, which he finished in 93. He has been a PEM physician and educator for 30 years, starting 2000 and Michael, remind me, when was the first PEM guide?
Oh, I don't know the name. Yeah, I know how many versions we have. So it was May is going to be 2000, the 10th edition. So 9 years before that, or 10 years before that.
Awesome. So Michael started publishing the PEM guide back then, which is a wonderful, very helpful resource for us PEM clinicians and physicians, a tool that I've used many times. Michael published 9 versions of the book, as you heard, with the 10th version coming in May, so stay tuned. In addition, he also published 6 versions of PEM CARS, Clinical Article Review, which is another tool I often use to teach my residents and now fellows. And the 7th version of that is coming in the fall. And he also worked on the SIM book, which again is a tool I use when I do SIM with my residents and now fellows. Michael has been a PEM educator for residents, fellows, nurses, and faculty since 93. He is currently the Director of Education at the Division of Pediatric Emergency Medicine at Bellevue Hospital Center. Michael, did I miss anything?
No, I would just add that all of those books are free and available.
Yes, they are free.
Or PDF versions.
Correct. And that's how I heard about it from the PEM listserv and have been using it for quite a while. So welcome, Michael, to the show. Thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. This is my first podcast.
I am honored. I'm truly honored that PEM Rules is your first involvement in podcast, and hopefully there are more to come. My first question to you, Michael, and it's a question I ask all my guests. As a PEM physician for so many years, what do you think makes a good PEM doctor or a PEM clinician? Somebody who does what?
So I was a fellowship director for 25 years, and I had the opportunity to work with a lot of young, amazing PEM physicians. And I found that in order to excel in our field, you need 2 things. One is intellectual curiosity, and the other is self-motivation. Curiosity enables you to continue to learn. Our field doesn't sit still. As generalists, we need to know a little bit about every field in medicine. Many of the PEM guide chapters that I've written are in areas where I know very little about, and that's the way I learn now. Also, to truly excel, you need to be self-motivated. It needs to come from you. Surround yourself with great mentors and colleagues. There will be lots of obstacles along the way that you can only overcome if you're passionate and self-motivated.
I could not agree more. Those are pearls of wisdom. Thank you very much. I completely agree. You phrased it perfectly. And my second question to you, kind of on the same line, again, many of us PEM clinicians work in academic centers, and I see myself as an educator, secondary to being a physician. So what do you think makes a good PEM educator? Again, one who is what? What is your advice for people like me who are, again, PEM physicians and clinicians, but also try to be good educators?
So not surprisingly, the traits that make you a great PEM physician are also the ones that make you a great educator. Take every opportunity to educate. Some of the best learning occurs on the fly with a new x-ray or laboratory result pops up. Role model being a learner for your learners. Look something up with them. Do a literature search in the ED. For new educators, explore early in your career to find what niche you're particularly interested in. If you had told me when I was a fellow that I would be teaching statistics, research design, critical appraisal, and simulation, I would have laughed at you. But those are opportunities that came up along the way. Once you settle on a path, one of the most important things to learn is how to say no to those things that don't further your goals. One of my favorite statements is volunteer for the things you're interested in before someone volunteers you for the things that you are not. Fresh out of fellowship, my chairman thought it would be a great idea for me to join the hospital ethics committee. It was not a great idea, and I got off of that as soon as possible. I also spent a very busy year on the institution's IRB. It was really helpful for me as a research mentor to our fellows to understand the process. So it was grateful for that, but I also got off of that as soon as possible. Also, advocate for any training that you may need as an educator. I spent a lot of my early years going to PAS conferences and sitting through workshops on things that I wanted to learn how to give, things like curriculum development that I didn't really have a place to start from. I've taken 2 critical appraisal courses, including one at the New York Academy of Medicine and the other one in master. And I took the simulation course at the Center for Medical Simulation in Boston. Things change and you're going to have to learn new things along the way. The next piece of advice is that get feedback on everything you do. And from an educational standpoint, start building your educational portfolio as soon as possible. And that includes the feedback that you receive. Everything you do in education, think about scholarship. So how can I publish this? How can I make this be something that goes on my CV and documents the effort that I put into this? I kind of think of my early career as content and curriculum development, and my later career is kind of more of the dissemination phase of my career, getting all of the work I put in out there to everyone else to benefit from them. Another good piece of advice is generally when we talk about medical education research, we talk about publishing papers, but you can also publish content. So MedEd Portal is a great resource for medical education content, but it's also a great way to get yourself published for that content in a peer-reviewed manner.
Thank you, Michael. Those are really, really great advice. As you were speaking, you kind of reminded me of one of my rules. Don't turn down any opportunities. So you definitely did that by taking some opportunities that you may not have been excited about, but obviously provided good education and good experience for you. Really great advice. Lastly, I want to ask you, Michael, as you know, with the podcast, it's all about rules or pearls, with rule number 1 being it's not the patient's job to prove that they're sick, it's your job to prove that they're not. That's one of the things I learned in my fellowship in Pittsburgh. And as a PEM clinician for so many years, I was wondering if you have any rules or any pearls that you follow in your clinical work.
Well, that's a tough question. There are lots of them. And sometimes I wish I had written them down. Just one good clinical pearl I talked to a resident the other day about is after reducing a nursemaid's elbow, sometimes it takes some time for the child to realize it doesn't hurt anymore and to be using it. What I've learned to do is stand up, take the child from the parent, let them go, and they want to get away from me. So they lift up both arms and then they're ready to go home. Lots of little tricks that you learn over a kind of a lifetime of working with children.
So send the child with the nursemaid's elbow home after he raised his hands to hug his parents.
To get away from me and hug his
To
parents.
get away from you.
For them to pick them up.
Perfect. Any other rules that you can share with us, Michael?
Just again, every case is a learning case. There's something every resident can learn or every fellow can learn. There's something to learn from every case that you're involved with.
I could not agree more. I tell that to the pediatric residents. I can talk about URIs forever.
No,
So much research about URIs, what seems to be so trivial and maybe annoying. There's so much to know.
Yeah, I've learned that a lot of the basic things like otitis and pharyngitis and pneumonia and UTIs get glossed over, and there's a lot of literature and a lot of detail to learn about those. And in fact, when I first started my career, those were the talks I did first. They weren't exactly PGM talks necessarily, but they were things I wanted to master.
Excellent. So start with the basics.
Yes.
Start with the basics.
Always.
Maybe I can add that to one of my rules.
Yeah, that one sounds good.
Wonderful, Michael. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really, really appreciate it. Again, you have been an inspiration for people like me. I've been following your work for many years. I try to be as best clinician as I can, but I really try to be as best educator as I can to kind of teach the next generation, residents, fellow medical students, and you certainly have been an inspiration to all of that. Thank you very much for coming on the show. And I hope you get more involvement with podcasts in the future. I'm sure you know by now, this is how residents, medical students, and even fellows now learn medicine.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was a great experience.
And as usual, Michael, I try to honor my guests with the outro of their choice.
Mhm.
And you told me that you're a Motown kind of guy.
Exactly.
All right. So I guess ABC by the Jackson 5 is your choice of an outro. Is that right?
Perfect. Yes.
Perfect. You like the Jackson 5?
I love the Jackson 5.
All right. So I
Almost
got to
on.
say, not an easy one, but I will do my very best to get the Jackson 5 on my guitar.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael, for coming on the show. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
And that is it for today, guys. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you for tuning to PEM Rules. Thank you, Michael, for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom with us. Please continue to check PEMRules.com and submit any feedback you have. This is my attempt to do Jackson 5's ABC on my guitar and my bass. Hope you like it.